Hello, learners. Welcome to the Brandon Simbarashe Show. I'm your host. Brandon here is going to give you free extra lessons that help you understand tricky topics, save your parents' money, and make learning more fun. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Every time we reach an additional 500 subscribers, we bring in another professional teacher to explain more subjects. So if you want more lessons in history, heritage, sociology, and beyond, like mathematics, science, hit the subscribe button now. Today we are going to learn a very important topic, race and ethnicity. By the end of this lesson, you understand how societies, group of people, how prejudice and discrimination work, and why is racism harmful. So let's dive in. Number one, we are going to look at what is race. What is race? So race is a socially constructed category of people who share biologically transmitted traits that a society considers important. Okay, so this is race. Race is a socially constructed category of people who share biologically transmitted traits that a society considers important. So this can include skin color, hair texture, facial features, and body shape. But here is the thing. Even though we think race is about biology, it's actually socially constructed or socially created. For example, people in one country may consider a light skin superior, while another society may value dark skin differently. Race exists because society says it matters, not because of science. For example, for example, in Nazi Germany, Jews were treated as a race. Hitler considered them as inferior, even though they are really an ethnic group based on shared culture and religion. They were treated really differently. So, what is ethnicity? We need to understand again what ethnicity is. So, according to Giddens 2009 and Masionis in 2012, they defined that race is about culture, language, and shared heritage. So, in other words, race refers to the cultural practices and outlooks that sets different members of the society apart from others. Okay, members of an ethnic groups see themselves as culturally distinct. You see yourself as different from another ethnic group. Okay, people define themselves based on language, religion, or ancestry. So in Zimbabwe, you have Shona, Ndebele, Venda, Kalanga. Each has unique customs and ways of living. Okay, so this is all we have on ethnicity. Now we look at the differences between race and ethnicity. Okay, so race is about biology. When you talk about race, we are talking about biology, skin color, hair type, etc. But when you talk about ethnicity, it's about cultural things like language, religion, and ancestry. So this sets a difference between race and ethnicity. So we need to understand that another difference between race and ethnicity is that race usually is unitary. Okay, the race is unitary. There is one race. Sometimes black. We have the blacks. We have the whites only, and then we have the red Indians, we have the white Indians. Those are different races, but we have multiple ethnic groups in the society who exist in the society. Yet we have fewer races. We have fewer races, and we have what multiple ethnic groups. So another thing is that race is assigned at birth, but ethnicity can be learned or adopted. Another thing is that one cannot hide his or her race, but ethnicity sometimes can be hidden. Okay. Fun fact: Barack Obama is racially black, but ethnically mixed. His mother was Caucasian. So this is the differences that we have on race and ethnicity. So let's look at the social construction of race. Okay, so when you talk about the social construction of race, we are just simply trying to say that race is socially constructed. The fact that it's not about biology, but it is race is actually constructed in the society. Okay, why is race? How is race constructed in the society? It is because society decides who belongs to which race and not biology. Okay, another thing is that race is socially constructed because race is shaped by history and social treatment. Okay, so those with more power, again, this is another thing which shows that race is socially constructed. Those with more power often define the races to benefit themselves. We see that those people with more power, they define or they define the races in order for them to benefit. Okay, for example, in Brazil, a light-skinned black person can be considered white if they are rich, showing social classes. So this shows that sometimes race can be defined um, by those in power in order to benefit what themselves. Like I said, in Brazil, a light-skinned black person can be considered white if they are rich. Okay, now let's look at minority groups and majority groups. So first of all, you need to understand what the majority group is and what the minority group is. So the minority group just simply refers to people who are singled out for unequal treatment. So these are people who are not treated the same as other people in the society, or a certain group which is treated unequally with other groups. So they are disadvantaged even if they are even if they are numerically what numerically large. Example, during the apartheid, blacks were the majority by number, but whites held power. So this means that we were regarded as the minority group, even though we were numerically large in number. Okay, so the whites, they were few by that time, but they were the what? But they were the majority group. So in other words, when you talk about the majority and the minority group, we are not trying to say that the group with the higher population or the group with the lower population, but we are just simply trying to say about the group. A minority group is just simply a group which is singled out for unequal treatment in the society. So I've given you the examples. Okay, so let's look at the majority or the dominant groups. So the majority group can also be called the dominant groups. So who are the majority or the dominant groups? So the majority groups are those who have more wealth, power, and prestige, regardless of their number. So it just simply refers to the group of people who have more wealth, power, and prestige, regardless of what of their number. So now let's look at the characteristics of minority groups. According to Wegley and Harris, they given five characteristics of minority groups. Okay, I'm just going to give these points, and then in your own words, you can just explain anyhow you want. So, the first characteristic of the minority group is that there is unequal treatment and less power. They are unequally treated in the society and they have less power. Okay. Another thing is that there is in the minority groups there is involuntary membership. You are born into the group. Okay. Okay, another thing in the another characteristics of the minority group is that there is high in-group marriages. People tend to marry within the group. You cannot marry the people from the majority group. Let's take for an example. During that time, as I have said, during the time Zimbabwe was colonized, we were many in number, but the whites were the majority groups. So the characteristic of a minority group is that you are minor, you cannot marry from the majority group. Hence, there is a high number in group what marriages. People tend to marry within the group. Okay, so let's look at the characteristics of the majority groups. So the majority group, another first characteristic is that they often enforce segregation. Segregation. In Zimbabwe, you call it rusaruraganda and stuff. That is segregation. So another characteristic of the majority group is that they use laws to control the minority group. So they tend to use the laws in order to control the minority groups. Another thing is that they oppress the minority groups legally and socially. Okay, sometimes leads to marginalization. So these are the characteristics of the majority groups. So we are done with looking at race and ethnicity. We have defined race, we have defined ethnicity, we have defined their differences. We have looked at the majority groups, we have looked at the minority groups. So now let's look at another subtopic under this topic, race and ethnicity, which are called stereotypes. So we need to understand what stereotypes are. So stereotypes, they are oversimplified generalization about a group of people. Okay, so these are just simply oversimplified generalization or assumptions. Okay, we can just say these are assumptions a person can have towards a group of people. So these assumptions can be positive, negative, or they can be just neutral. For example, Shona boys are it is said that Shona boys are more caring than the Ndebele boys. A stereotype, not always true. So a stereotype can be true, cannot be true, can be negative, positive, or can be neutral. Okay. So let's move on, guys. Let's move on. We also have a thing called prejudice. Okay. So what is prejudice? Okay. So prejudice, negative prejudice, sorry, prejudice simply refers to negative beliefs or feelings about a group. Okay, so you have that negative feeling. You have when we talked about stereotypes, we just so these are assumptions which a person have towards a group of people. They can be positive or negative or neutral. But when you talk about a prejudice, these are negative beliefs or feelings about a group without experience. You don't even have experience with that person. You don't have experience with that person, but already I've given a negative what I've already have a negative belief. I already have negative feelings. So prejudice simply refers to negative beliefs or feelings about a group without experience with them. Okay. Usually prejudice often based on ethnocentrism. Okay, so let's look at another thing which is called discrimination. So discrimination simply refers to unfair treatment based on group membership. That is, I'm being discriminated. What? So, and discrimination simply refers to unfair treatment based on group what membership. So this is different from prejudice, though, because it is thought versus action. When we talk about prejudice, it's all about the thoughts. But when you are now discrimination, it's about action. You are discriminating someone. But when you talk about prejudice, prejudice is just the negative feeling, assumptions you have towards a certain individual. Sorry, positive feeling. Yes, negative beliefs or sorry, negative beliefs or feelings you have towards an individual. Okay. So we have talked about. We still are talking about discrimination. Okay. Discrimination can be positive. Okay, don't quote me wrong. Discrimination can be positive, meaning that discrimination sometimes can give advantages, or it sometimes can be negative. It can create obstacles in the society. So we have types of discrimination we have in the society. We have ageism, caste, disability, sex, gender, culture, or subculture. Uh, so example of discrimination is that refusing to hire someone because they are foreign. Okay, This is an example of discrimination. So we are done looking at discrimination. Now let's look at racism. So racism is a belief that one's race is superior than others. Okay. So when you are racist, you believe that your race is superior than other races. You see other races as inferior. So we have forms of racism. Okay. The forms of racism that we have institutional racism. Institutional racism built into systems. It happens in systems like the law sector, schools, police, etc. So that's the institutional racism. It happens in various institutions that you see yourself being discriminated or being racially discriminated at school. You see racism at the police. You see racism in the where else, in the church. So this it will be an institutional racism. Okay, we also have another form of racism we have is that we have individual racism. Okay, so individual racism, we take for an example the president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, will be uh, will be uh, acting racist towards different races. Okay, so that we call it individual racism. That is another form of racism. Okay, we also have internalized. Okay, we also have internalized racism. Internalized racism is another form of racism where victims start believing they are inferior. So when we have internalized racism, it's like me as a black person, I start to believe that I am inferior. Okay, we have internalized that racism in the society. Another form is that the interpersonal racism. Okay, and we also have aversive racism. Those are the forms of in sociology we have the theories of prejudice and discrimination. So the theories we have six theories we have in of racial of prejudice and discrimination. Okay, so the first theory we have is ethnocentrism. We have the scapegoat theory, we have functionalist theory, and we have conflict theory. The conflict theory, we have the Marxist and the feminist, and we also have the symbolic interactionist theory. Okay, so on the ethnocentrism theory, simply says that you are judging other people's culture using your own culture as a yardstick. You see your own culture as superior and see others' culture as inferior. Okay, so on the scapegoat theory, it was by Dollard. So on the scapegoat theory, he sees the dominant group blaming the minority group for the problems they face in the society, and this can cause multiple problems in the society.